opportunity to pick at us. So we're just going to do a quick introduction, then we'll get to it. My name is Carolina Alverez. I work for White & Turner. I've been with them since 2016. I'm from Yonkers, New York. And yeah. Oh, I just don't have a chair. So.
My name is Michevi Dufflart. I work for Keller North America. I graduated from Manhattan College in 2020, and now I work at Geotechnical.
My name is Mary Penny. I work as a project engineer with Arcadis. It's a water and environmental firm. Graduated from Northeastern University, and then my master's in Manhattan College, and our office is in White Plains. So, very close.
Hi everyone, Briana Brown. I'm a Readiness leader at GE Aerospace. I work remotely from New York, but we'll get into that. I've worked in a couple different areas in aviation. I graduated from Radical High School, so I'm from Rockland.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Cooperman. I work for Kiewit, which is a design, engineering, and construction company. We're based in Brooklyn, New Jersey, but we work nationwide. And right now I'm a project manager for one of our design build jobs in Rockland County.
So a lot of you guys are here obviously today, and probably already know, or if you don't know, engineering. So what is engineering, right? Obviously it's a very broad umbrella. So I actually don't have an engineering degree, so I'm going to pass it on to my panelists here if you guys want to go more into it. I'm a construction management degree, so that's why.
Close in line.
Yes, very close.
Can I go down the line again?
For me answering this question.
Well, yeah, you know, like all the different types of engineering.
Got it, okay. So, there are many different types of engineering. I went to school for civil engineering and then went very specifically into a category of civil engineering called geotechnical engineering. And geotechnical engineering is pretty much just anything that has to do with the soils and installing foundations. So what you would think of underneath a building or a bridge or anything that supports those types of structures.
And similarly, I have my civil undergrad degree, went a completely different direction. So civil in general is a very wide umbrella. You can do a lot with it. But I went into environmental, which is basically anything water related, wastewater, drinking water, stormwater, flood resiliency. Those are the kind of things that my firm does on the water management and water treatment end.
Yeah, so I went to school for mechanical engineering and then ended up pivoting towards business. So I do more management, technical systems management now. But when I first started out, I was a quality engineer at Supports the Aircraft based in Stratford, Connecticut. So in that role specifically, we're looking at drawings, we're looking at blueprints, and when there's an issue on the aircraft during the build or the manufacture process, we get involved and we try to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So we're working with different teams of engineers and different cross-functional groups to make sure that we can solve that problem. Specifically, that was helicopters. Now we're doing engines at GRO.
So my degree is in civil engineering, but I've done the majority of my work in the construction side of it once I graduated. And in the construction side, I've seen a lot of mechanical, probably more mechanical than civil, and then even some electrical, and a lot of structural and different types of engineering. But one thing I'll say is that probably, whichever type of engineering it is, really what you're doing is you're working in groups to solve problems. And it's just teamwork to solve problems every day, no matter what type of engineering you do. That's really the way I like to talk about it, because it boils it down the most, I think.
Well said, for sure. With the whole problem solving. So, like I gave the full disclaimer, I didn't do engineering. I have my associates in architecture technology, and then I transferred to construction management. And my company, White & Turner, we hire a lot of civil, mechanical, electrical engineers. Not because we design, but because of the way they think. We're collaborating with architects, engineers to solve problems and just bring them to life. So, we're going to jump right into the questions. So, I'll start with Sarah. Why did you pick engineering?
So I picked engineering because the classes I liked most in middle school and high school were science and math. And then in addition, my dad and my grandpa were both engineers, so they really pushed me that engineering route. You know, they sold me that you're gonna have a lot more options and a lot of different paths that you can take after college, even if it opens opens a lot of doors, and just like you were touching on before, they're really hiring you when you get out of school for what you learned in school and how you learn to work with people in school, not for the math problems that you solved in school, if that makes sense.
So I guess for me, it was two reasons. My mom, very active, very involved. I went to like a women in engineering conference in Michigan Technical University for like a week or 2 weeks, and I learned about all the different types of engineering. And my family was very doctor, lawyer, engineer, and it was kind of just like, okay, like math and science, let's, maybe try that out, see how it goes. And I winded up with either mechanical engineering or civil because I loved roller coasters. And I was like, I'm going to go work for Six Flags and Disney and design roller coasters. It's gonna be it. I obviously ended up with helicopters, which is, cool too. But that was the original. I was just like, I love this thing. I want to see how this works. So that was my initial interest in it. And that's kind of the path and the doors that I ended up going down towards aviation.
You must have played roller coaster tycoon when you did that.
It was just amazing.
So I was definitely more split when I was in high school. I really liked to do art. I took AP art. I was very involved in, doing my art shows. But I also loved math and science. My parents had a very real conversation with me that, look, if you go to art school, your life is not going to be very easy after graduation. My parents were very open about that, but they were very open with me pursuing my dreams. But I loved engineering because it still allowed you to have the creativity. We deal with developing drawings, and no matter what field you go into, there's some form of creativity there. So it also, when you graduate, you're really set up for success almost immediately. So in a way, it allows you to really do something that's going to get you on the right track for your life, and then also be able to still pursue your hobbies. So ultimately, I was down and back, but I was able to make the decision that engineering was for me and not art school, but I still do art on the side. So it definitely allows the creativity there, which is important.
I actually didn't learn about engineering until I was in high school, and I was actually pretty far into high school. I was a junior, and my high school had offered a field trip to go to different places across the city. I grew up in the Bronx, and so I said, okay, let's see what they have to offer. So they offered a field trip to the Brooklyn Bridge, and I had never been there, so I was like, yeah, sure, let's go. So I went with this group that they put us in, and it was like the cloudiest, rainiest day you could ever imagine. And the tour guide was walking us over the bridge and going to each abutment at the bridge and stuff, and just saying this is what happened here, this is how this was constructed, and I was literally in awe. I was like, wow, this is awesome. I can't believe that people have done this for so long. And the thing that I found most interesting about the Brooklyn Bridge was that a woman ended up finishing the completion of the bridge. So her husband and her son, I believe, were the main engineers on it, but they both ended up getting sick. So she ended up overseeing the end of the project. And once I learned that, I was like, if she could do that in 1800, I could certainly do this now in 2000. So from there, I went on to just look more into it, and I said, okay, this is actually kind of interesting. I really like this idea. Let me run with it and see where I go.
So I guess I'll speak for the few myself that we're not the best in math, and because obviously not everyone is great at math. So I remember being a little hesitant when I was hearing about all these math things and you need engineering. I was like, oh, I definitely were. I liked math and I liked science, but I wasn't the top of the class, for sure. I went to Saunders Trades and Technical School in Yonkers, New York. I did architecture technology there, so I was doing drafting by hand, the AutoCAD, 3D drawings, renderings, and all that. And I really liked that, the creativity about it. I was always very artistic. So because it came naturally to me, I decided to go to SUNY Delhi, where they have the architecture program. And I liked it, but what I really liked, which kind of hits with the next question about why I picked college, what I really liked about that architecture program at SUNY Delhi was that they have hands-on, the architecture students have classes with the construction students, so you're actually, cutting wood, mixing concrete, making sidewalks, making picnic tables. You're getting your hands dirty, and that's what I really liked. I was like, wait, I can get these drawings, I don't have to draw them, and I can make them come off the paper, I can bring it to life. So I liked being part of that team, and that's kind of what got me into, okay, what is this? And they were like, oh, that's construction management. We manage the safety, the money, and the schedule of the project. So that's why I decided to switch over, because I decided, okay, well, I'm not, and I only had to get to pre-calculus. I didn't have to do all these equations that these amazing women do, I'm sure. But I liked that part of it. So if you are, a little nervous because you're not the best at math, there is opportunity, and, you can still work alongside designers and things like that. So don't be hesitant, don't doubt yourself. There is that path as well. So, what influenced, where you went to college? So, I guess I'll back this way. You guys heard about my college experience, but what influenced me about where to go to college, although my parents didn't bring me to events like this in particular when I was really young, we did do a lot of college campus tours, which I highly recommend, because you can only see so much on the website. Bringing your kids to your young adult children at that time, to the campus, I always encourage parents and their kids to have lunch at these campuses, and kind of just feel the environment. Is everyone really cliquey, or is there programs going on? So take that into account when you're visiting colleges, because one thing that I liked about SUNY was it was a very small school. It was about under 4,000 students at the time, and I knew if I was going to do something like architecture, that I was going to have long nights. I didn't want to be in a studio of 400 people, or a class of 300, and my attendance wasn't even taken into account. So I personally like the small schools, so I can have that personal relationship with my professors and stuff like that. So it worked out for me, went great. But I also know people that went to huge schools, are also great. So it's a personal choice.
Yeah, definitely a personal preference, whether or not you like it to be more personalized to you, or if that really doesn't matter to you, you kind of just want to get the information and continue on with that, that's fine. For me, I definitely wanted that more personal feel, so I went to Penn College. It's a pretty small school, like 4,000 people all together, so it's very easy to see people's faces and recognize them. Even now, walking around today, I've seen people that have graduated 2, 3, 4 years ahead of me, and I recognize them just because the school was so small. I definitely did debate though between larger schools. The other school that I really wanted to go to was RPI, a bit upstate near Albany. And I had ultimately decided for the whole, I want a more personal feel. I want professors that will have some office hours to help me, and not a grad student to help me. That's what I wanted, so that's what I ultimately chose.
Yeah, I think another big differentiating factor when you're searching for schools is also seeing, what do you like? Do you want a city, or do you want a more rural environment? Because that's a very big differentiator between schools. So I went to Northeastern University, which is right in downtown Boston. It was a no-brainer for me because I wanted to be in a city. I grew up in Westchester. I didn't really get city life as a kid. So going into Boston was really exciting. I know the city like the back of my hand now. I'll always have that kind of part of me. And Northeastern's probably a medium-sized school, 10 to 15,000. But keep in mind, even with a bigger school, engineering programs tend to be a very small subsect of that. So the perk of going to maybe a more medium to large size school is that there is a lot of flexibility. If engineering turns out to not be for you, there's probably a business college, there's probably a biology college, there's all different ways you can go. You probably get that at smaller schools too. But it's just something to think about when you're looking at schools is give yourself a little bit of flexibility, right? Maybe you're interested in STEM, maybe you think you want bio, or you think you want engineering, but going to a school where there's other options does help you, so you don't have to completely just come home, regroup, and apply to a new school. But I think thinking about city versus rural versus that is really important, and it really depends on your personality. So take that into account too when you're looking at schools.
Yeah, so for undergrad, I went to Stony Brook University, and Stony Brook has a great engineering program. That wasn't the main factor for why I went. I actually wanted to go to Boston University, and loved it, saw the price tag, and was like, okay, so state school. And Stony Brook was the perfect option for me. I started out, they have you in kind of an area of interest, so your first 2 years are really just intro classes. You're taking a lot of the same classes that all of the other engineers are. The only difference is going to be your 101. So my mechanical engineering 101 was intro to statics and dynamics and all these other things that you're going to learn further in. And I knew other like software engineering majors who were taking like a 101 software, but we were all in the same physics class, the same calc classes. I went to Stony Brook. Stony Brook's about 20,000, right? So it's a huge school, and then you have the grad school on top of it. But I never felt like I couldn't just go to my professor's office, schedule some time, email him if I had a question. We did have TAs that would do some office hours, but sometimes the professors would do their own. So it really just depends. I think if there was one thing that I knew when I was in high school, it would be to go where I would want to work. So a lot of colleges have relationships with the companies in that area, and that's where they recruit from a lot, just because of proximity. And I did not want to work in Long Island, right? I ended up working there eventually, long story. But I knew that I wanted to kind of get outside of New York, and I ended up doing that with some other positions. But that's something to consider too.
So I actually went to Penn State, so probably very different than some of you guys. And my parents did the same thing in high school. I grew up in Massachusetts, so we had a ton of schools to go to kind of figure out what that feel was before flying across the country to a big school. So we did a very serious still about WPI. They really wanted me to go to RPI or RIT, but honestly I went there and I just wasn't feeling it, and it's so important to actually visit it and like where you're at, because you can't just force yourself into a school because it's where you should be going for the academics or something like that. You really need to visit it and see what you like, because if you're not comfortable there, it's going to be very hard to be successful. And so that's one thing I would say, that you just need to visit and see what you like. And it happened when I went to Penn State. I really loved it. I also like Delaware and WPI, Lehigh, but I just ended up there mostly because of the programs they had. And the biggest one was they have a women in engineering program orientation. So as a female in engineering, you're able to go to school like a few days early and do a special orientation, and you get put in pods and you meet all these people. And to me, that was a huge relief that I would be kind of like taken under the wing by somebody before I started school, because I was very nervous about, meeting new people, or that I wasn't gonna like it or something like that. And so that was a very helpful thing. And I always have been under, similar to what you guys were saying, that you can make a big school smaller. And that's definitely what I did. They had the club gymnastics that I wanted to do, they had the engineering programs that I wanted to do, and I felt comfortable that if I pivoted and wanted to do a different type of engineering, it was very easy to switch. Because same thing, your first 2 years are all general engineering classes before you get into the other ones. So, and again, if I didn't like that, I could switch to business, I could switch to architecture, I could switch to something else that they offer.
So without knowing, a lot of you actually kind of take the next question. I have to know what type of engineering I want to do.
No.
I think if you have a feel for something, or if you have general interests, that's a good place to start. But it is very easy to move around, and then even once you start working full time, there's so many different opportunities, and a technical background just opens the door.
Oh yeah, you could get your engineering degree and go work in like finance. Like they love engineers. You can basically do whatever you want. Not to like put us too much on a pedestal, but the engineering degree kind of teaches you how to think, it teaches you how to collaborate with others, so it's a desirable degree. I've had many friends who went into engineering and ended up going into a completely different industry, whether it be my cousin works for Peloton. She's like a big marketing exec with them. She helps with the production of the new equipment, and her background in engineering, totally different. So there's a lot of flexibility. So you definitely don't need to go now.
You're right on the money.
Oh gosh.
What is that? Anything. So, really, the possibilities are really endless. So, do you guys have any questions for us right now? We have more questions, but we can take some questions now. I saw this one first.
Yeah, what kind of internship opportunities did you have when you were in school, and did they help you?
So that was another big reason why I chose Penn State, because they have tons of career fairs. There's the civil career fair, there's architectural, there's the school one, there's the engineering one, and you have so many opportunities to meet with these companies and try to get an internship. And also what the Women in Engineering program does is they coach you into that. So they teach you how to put your resume together, they do mock interviews with you, they do all these mock things that help you be prepared and confident to go to the career fair. And they tell you even to go your very first one as a freshman so that you can get comfortable in doing it. And even going to events like this today, you guys are getting comfortable with meeting new people, asking questions, similar to trying to get an internship in school.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was in internship program, so they liked to get students while they were in their freshman and sophomore years so that you would have recurring internships with that company to increase the likelihood of getting a job offer. So I started out at Sikorsky Aircraft, and I had 3 different internships there. And each internship gave me a little more insight into where I thought I actually would enjoy what I'm doing. So I started out in quality, then transferred to like purchasing, like sourcing, procurement for whatever the aircraft was, and then ended up in manufacturing and realized that I loved being on the floor and being around the products and getting to walk the shop line, seeing like the naval officers walk through the plant, and that really interested me. So when I came up and into full-time work, I was in aerostructures manufacturing operations. So it really informed that. I think there's a ton of resources at your college, whether it's different clubs. There are specific engineering societies that will prep you when you're going to internship fairs. So I got into a program in freshman year, so I didn't have to do that, but I had a lot of friends who would go to the career fairs, but they had been prepped by some of these different societies, or the career center itself. I was in the career center freshman year because I was like, yep, I need a job, that's what I'm here to do. So let me figure out what I need to understand as I went through that process.
Another thing you can also look for, and I couldn't agree more with trying different jobs, right? Try different types of internships. But Northeastern there's a couple of them, but they have what's called a co-op program. It's becoming more prevalent, I think, but basically how it works is I was in class for 6 months and then I worked for 6 months. And that was basically a 3-year cycle. So I graduated with a 1.5 years of engineering experience. So my resume looked a lot different than some of my other, peers from other colleges. So it was interesting because, you're also like learning how to live, which is actually the most important thing. When I was on my co-op, I was paying rent, I was paying groceries, and I was a sophomore. So like I was learning about life, right? Learning about bills, learning about rent, which I think was like more valuable than anything. But also just being able, I had 3 co-ops. I did a construction one, I did a municipality, and then I did a consultant. And going back, that's very valuable, trying different things. So if you're really interested in getting as much work experience as possible, I'd explore schools that have like a true co-op program. But I think more and more schools are adopting those because they are very popular.
I had 2 internships while I was in college, and I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in school. I was kind of like, I like civil engineering, but since that umbrella is so big, it was like, you can do so much with it, so I was like, let me just try some things out. So I started one internship working for like a facade restoration company, and I was literally like, this is nice, but I'd like to see what else is out there. So the following year I did a different internship, and I decided to work for a consultant, and that was a lot of office work, which I don't really like to do a lot of. So I decided, you know what, this isn't for me. So when I went at the end of my senior year to look for a job, I was like, all right, let me see if I can do something more that's outside. So I think the internships really helped me like figure out what I liked and what I didn't like, and that's pretty much what I took out of those experiences.
Also, if you're not able to find an internship, just ask to shadow somebody could be just an eye-opening experience, and you could immediately tell this is something I do want to do, or I should try to get an internship that's different.
That's good.
Yeah, and I mean, you could do that now. Like, if you have an interest, some people love that, like, even if it's, like, once a week, Friday or something, it's a lighter day.
I guess, ton of internships, do as many as you can, because testing the waters, I do not test the waters. My school required 8-month-long internships. It was a full summer, full semester. I did it with my intern, so obviously I got to know the company very well. They got to know me. They got to know my strengths, my weaknesses. And I'm still here today, bothering them. So, worked out great. But I agree with testing the waters, for sure. There was a question here.
So we speak a little bit about what it was like specifically being a female engineering student, what it's like being a woman in the company.
We're jumping ahead. Who wants to go first?
I guess I'll start. So going to Stony Brook, right, so we're talking about a really large campus. and I think we touched on this, the engineering programs are very small, right? So I would have the same women in my classes. I was also in Women in Science and Engineering, which is like a WISE program. So our first year, you were put in like this group of like maybe 5 or 6 other women, some who were in your classes, some not. And it was a bonding program. Like we really got to know each other. We would do our homework together. We would go to the WISE specific events that were catered towards resume reviews, mock interviews, navigating your classes, leadership, things like that. But I guess in school, it was just teamwork. You're learning to work with different types of people no matter who they are or where they come from. In the workplace, I think I was very green. Like in the beginning, I'm like, I could do anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I ended up in a manufacturing supervision role in Troy, Alabama. I think it was like 21. And I was managing people who were like 3 times my age. I learned a lot. I learned a ton, but putting yourself in situations that sometimes make you a bit uncomfortable really teach you a lot about how to work in a business and how to be a woman in that kind of environment where I was like one of 3 women in supervision, and even less than that in the plant, right? So it can be daunting, but you absolutely can do it.
I had a completely different experience, because I hear engineering is very like 40-60 ratio, right? Since I was in construction management.
That was 5'5".
Well, my graduating class was like right at 100, and I was one of 3. But the other 2 were transfers. So. Nonetheless, so walking in, when I was in school, yes, I was the only girl in the class. I would show up late because my nails were wet, and you know, you definitely stand out for sure. But I still got a lot of support from the staff. Like, you know, they found it very encouraging. They would ask me to go to the schools and speak to, you know, because they want to see more women in the field. So I got a lot of support from my faculty, for sure. And it was exactly what you said. We all have the same homework assignments, so we all need to get to the same answer. So we all worked in a lot of team setting. So that, I didn't realize at the time how much it was preparing me to be the only woman walking into a conference room now. And I'm usually the youngest person in the room, so there's that as well. The curly hair throws people off. So, you know, I'm a sore thumb when I walk into a lot of construction sites. So, or it's like, oh, who brought their daughter into work? Or, you know, are you the intern? No, hello, I'm a project manager, so you would like to get paid. So, you know, I like to think of it like it's definitely a noticeable feeling, and I personally just own it because you know there's no way I can hide it, right? So I kind of just own it. I really admire and appreciate when I have coworkers that stand up for me. I deal with, you know, like she said, I'm personally as a construction manager, I'm literally telling an owner of a masonry company, you're not getting paid because your men failed to meet the schedule. So that's a tough pill to swallow, you know what I'm saying, to tell someone. So I'm dealing with those uncomfortable situations. Granted, there's people above me, and you know, I had a situation where I was confronting a tile subcontractor, and the gentleman wouldn't even look at me in the eye. And my manager had, exactly as Carolina said, this, and this. So you do have, at least I have a lot of support in my company, because they know we're outnumbered. So I definitely feel supported. And that's really what you want to find ultimately. A place where you're comfortable and supported. Because we are a minority industry. At least, maybe not so much in engineering, but for construction purposes, I'm sticking out. So I would say always feel comfortable and supported is 2 big things.
It's definitely becoming bigger though, I would say, and more publicized as being a minority and thinking that, like 2 weeks ago was Women in Construction, for example, and like all these companies did all these different activities, and I know through Kiewit we have a Women in Kiewit program, and it's specifically, the goal is the attraction and retention of these women employees, and I will say it's, at this point, in a certain sense, it's actually, I don't wanna say a leg up, but it's like if you're willing to put in the effort and you're willing to try and all these things, they're looking to promote you and put you in these positions and make you ready, but you just have to want it, is pretty much what it, because they want to even the playing fields, and to do that, they have to have a lot of women in those positions.
I think they also notice, like, oh, you are one of the 17 women here. So obviously, it takes a certain personality to be that one woman out of 17, you know? So, to Sarah's point, you know, they do believe in you because you made it this far. So, you know, I totally agree with what you said. Like,
Yeah, companies are making a huge
Yeah.
push for it. I know Arcadis is a huge company, but like, I mean, they push like trying to get as close to like 50-50 as they can, right? It's not realistic. It varies so much based on the industry. Like environmental, I will say is probably the closest to 50-50 you'll see out of all the engineering, just because it just attracts a lot of women. I have a lot of all women teams, which is really cool, but then sometimes I acknowledge I'm on a call with all men, I'm like, this is cool, I'm here, everyone respects me. But yeah, I think companies are pushing for it more and more, I think, but it really does give you a leg up. If you wanna push and get up to the top, I think being a woman really helps in that, because people know what we're up against and are willing to help you. So you have to find the right firm, the right company. But I still give kudos to construction gals because I could not do that.
yeah, it's, what you just said. They know that we're like a diamond in the rough, not in the rough. That's not the right analogy I'm trying to think of. We're like one in a million. We're very few and far between. So they know that comes with extra qualities that someone else doesn't have. You know, and a lot of times they just kind of like are in awe of that, like, wow, so you manage 6 subcontractors? Yes, I do. So there's that.
Could I do one more?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
For college specifically, you had mentioned like, it's definitely a very noticeable feeling when you're the only woman or like one of the few women in a class with somebody, but like, that does not make you less capable in any way. Like you are
Know your stuff.
exactly just as capable as any like male classmate that you have in the room, and I think that's something really important to remember. So like getting up to this level where she's like managing a whole bunch of people, like she started somewhere, and that was pretty much probably believing in yourself. Yeah, and thinking that you're capable enough because you are. So that's.
And when you start doing things, and when you start doing your job, you almost like, it's tangible, but you almost forget. Like, there's times when I'm like on a call, and I'm just doing my thing, doing my work, and then you have that where we're like, oh wow, I'm like the only woman on this call of 10 other men. And it's like, it's there, but like, I can still do as you're doing your job, it becomes less of a factor, you know?
Good question. Yeah, I actually just wanted to know if any of you were Girl Scouts when you were in Girl Scouts.
I don't think I made it past brownies.
I did it with one of those, try to get as many or continue as many activities. I did it through, right up till high school, and then I wasn't as interested in the thing, then replaced it with other activities, but I think you learn a lot from Girl Scouts.
Any other questions? Yes.
I do a lot of work with military people and people coming out of like engineering programs at West Point. Have you encountered any former military people that have gone into kind of commercial engineering?
We have a lot at my company. Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of them, and they bring a really interesting background. And yeah, I know quite a couple off the top of my head. I mean, it's just interesting to hear their different backgrounds. So it's pretty prominent, I would say.
In the construction industry, we do see a lot of previous military, and I see them a lot in safety, of course, right? So we see them a lot in safety, but also they're good project managers in the sense of that there's always a big picture when you have a project, so they kind of cut through all the non-fun things and are focused on the goal. So sometimes I get a problem and I'm so, why is the tile late? Oh, because it's trapped, it's stuck in Minnesota somewhere, and okay, that's gonna cost $2,000 extra, travel, like I'm getting down to the very funnel issue. But we noticed that they have a bigger issue, so they're like, the tile's late, get it here. Let's move, next problem. So they check off problems much faster because they have that big picture.
Focusing on safety.
And certainly many women have gone into like Corps of Engineers and are going into the engineering fields that we see doing very well.
Yeah, so I guess my interaction with the military, when I was working for Sikorsky, which was recently bought out by Lockheed Martin, you're walking through the plant, you see folks in Air Force gear, naval gear, I mean, captains, everything. So when I was working in Alabama, our direct product was the UH-60 Seahawk. So that gets delivered straight to the Navy. At GE, we work on all of the military engine programs for the major aircraft, F-110, F-16. In that regard, and kind of the last maybe 5 years, I've been interfacing with the military more so on the procurement side and delivery. So for example, there was a ship out in California that was undergoing some power supply renovations, and we had to get a number, I think we had to get like 40 to them in 2 weeks. And they came on site, we did a presentation with them to explain on how we were gonna retrofit their aircraft and get it to them on time, and they were holding us accountable. We were on the phone with them almost every day, making sure they knew where their equipment was gonna be, because that ship was gonna take off for a mission, and we had to get it there before that.
Thank you.
It sounds like a lot of you had undergrad for civil or mechanical, but then you said you had these, you're in like water or soil, or like, I think I reversed it, but, did you get the job first and then you went back for that, or did you know that was what you're doing specifically and you went for your higher degrees and those types of things in aerospace, and then you went for the job? Like, how does that work? Is it chicken and egg, or what?
Yeah, so I went to school for college for civil engineering for 4 years. It's just a very general degree of college, so you get a Bachelor of Science in civil engineering, mechanical engineering, whatever engineering you decide to pursue. And then from there, when I went to my company, we focused specifically in geotechnical. So that is where now I'm just more focused in one specific area of civil engineering, which is that soil portion of it. So I guess I don't know what came first, but I guess the civil engineering general came first, and then I decided that I liked one specific part of civil engineering a little more, so I said, all right, I'm gonna focus on this.
So you had to go back to school, like,
So
for that? or-
No.
Oh, okay. that's what
Yeah,
happened.
once I had the degree, that was pretty much it.
Our degrees are basically identical,
Yeah.
right? Both of our degrees are gonna say a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. Northeastern does it a little differently in the fact that we go through the general engineering, just like all 4 of us went through kind of that first year or two. Then we go into our civil courses. Then there's actually branches. So there's transportation, geotech, environmental, and structural. Those are the 4, we call them concentrations at Northeastern. So the only thing that's different about my degree is it says BS in civil engineering with a concentration in environmental. So typically that would be enough, right? Engineering is great because you don't necessarily need to pursue a master's, but just to kind of hone in on my skills, Arcadis does pay for a master's, which was financially great for me because I couldn't afford a master's. But I wound up going back to school, getting my Master of Science in Environmental Engineering. But that was also linked back to that there wasn't really an environmental engineering program when I was an undergrad. That's changed a lot. Now there's environmental engineering specific. But yeah, it's one of those things, there's no going back to school. It's like with civil, you kind of figure it out as you go, and then that's kind of what you would maybe declare yourself as. Because saying I'm a civil engineer is like, okay, what else are you, right? Because it's just such a broad umbrella.
And then go to the companies that you work for, that education, send you for classes, send you for all kinds of symposiums, and then to learn more about what you actually.
It's just through project work, really. I mean, yeah, for me, I went to go to master's at night, but like, just through your project work, you figure out everything, and before you know it, you know what you're talking about, and you're now a water engineer.
You actually learn, I think a lot of people say this, you learn more after school than you really do in school. Like, I learned more in my 3-month internship than I really did the whole semester. So for example, I was civil and I was structural focused, which is essentially design, and mostly because they got rid of the construction management version, or else I totally would have done that as my capstone. But, so I was structural and thought I wanted to do design maybe, but did a construction internship just to see which one, and I loved it. And then I realized I would have hated structural, would have hated design, and that just personally was for me. But my first internship with Kiewit was civil engineering, a lot of dirt, concrete, all that stuff. And then my second internship with them, it actually was mechanical. And I was really nervous at first, I'm not mechanical, I'm civil, how would I know? But then, so it ended up, I loved it. I realized then that all construction management type things are very similar, it's just different work that you're doing, and that's what keeps it interesting in my mind. So, and then since then, I've been more mechanical, but I've been over electrical projects, and there's a lot of structural work on some of the projects. It's a whole mesh of things that you really are picking it up on the job, and you don't have to go back to school unless that's something that interests you.
Yeah, one thing I would say is when in touching with the internships, I remember when, like, after you go back to school from an internship, they're like, oh my god, the textbook makes sense. Now I know what that means.
Yeah.
So getting the real life aspect of the internship makes you understand more when you get back to the classroom, for sure.
I will say I haven't done any calculus though, so don't worry about that one. I can't tell you once when I've done calculus, why I opted out.
But going back to the calculus stuff, what they're really expecting you to do is to work as a team to
Yes.
get your problem sets done and pass them in. Like I'm telling you, you're really not doing that until you get to your capstone if you're civil and you're analyzing the beams, all that. That's math you're gonna be doing when you graduate, but if it's calculus, chemistry, the equations, they're teaching you to work together as a team to get your work done, is really what they're doing.
Or also, a lot of times they're showing you, because there's a lot of programs and Excel software that run all those numbers for you now. Sure, like you guys put in numbers something and then in the software, and I think it's like stat, just beam analysis.
Yeah,
And
our
there's
structural
no
engineers use that.
So like, there's all these programs and softwares that do all these differential equations for you. I think in the classroom, they're trying to show you to understand how it fits that number.
Yeah.
But you're probably not gonna be using it on your day-to-day work life.
Yeah, so I think I'll just add to that. So I feel like I kind of like cheat coded through Stony Brook a little. So I came in as mechanical engineering, did an internship, realized I was like, you know what? I don't know if I really want to do this. And I ended up switching because the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences at Stony Brook, right, encompasses all of those different courses. So I had enough mechanical courses that I had a specialization in mechanical engineering, but my actual degree is in applied math and statistics and technological systems management, because I knew from my internships that I was always going to veer business. I wanted to understand the technical enough to have those conversations, but then to also have the commercial and the sales piece of it, because I enjoyed that aspect of it also. The project management was really where I found my strong suit. So you can go into so many different areas of that. And then I also, because Sikorsky had a really great employee scholar program, got my master's in business through Stony, through my company. I didn't have to pay for it either. So that is a big win because, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of people, graduate school is just not financially feasible. I fell in that bucket. I was not pursuing it after graduation, and a lot of companies are pushing that, so they will reimburse you for, it's gotta be, you can't go and get your, master's in, I don't know, hard tuning or something. Like, it's gotta be a little bit
related to what you're doing.
But MBAs are really popular. I've had multiple colleagues get MBAs, Masters of Science in Engineering, Business Administration, there's lots of different degrees that you can go for, and a lot of companies pay for it.
And then I would just say, look, I mean, this is kind of, early right now, but you can always shift and go into like a different, after I left that company, I worked at a journalism and tech company in Miami for like 2 years and had the best time. It was doing like entrepreneurship. So now my role has kind of almost shifted to, I work in a brand new department and I'm helping to build out the standard working processes for this new team. So it's combining like all of these different skills that I've had just because I've done what I've wanted to do and doors opened where I went. So yes, like the field kid, I mean like me, I had, my mom was like, you need to get a good job, right? So I had that kind of pressure, but I also was just like, I'm the one who's gonna have to get up every day and go do this. So let me make sure it's what I'm enjoying. Yeah.
Question?
Were any of you interested in medicine?
I thought I wanted to be
Take
I thought I wanted to be a doctor for a little bit, and then I realized realized that I did not, I never would have been able to do that, but my sister is very interested in medicine. She actually was a biomedical engineer in school, and so now she's working, after she went to Yale, which is in the Yale New Haven hospitals now, working on their equipment, setting up their equipment, and all and kind of a lot of different technological, and again, working as a team to sort out their issues, install new equipment, upgrade, how they work, all these different things. And, but she also got to want to work for Stryker, for example. They make medical devices and also prosthetics and things like that. So if you're interested in medical, that's a great crossover, that biomedical.
And it's so big right now. Like, I know Northeastern built a whole building for biomedical engineering. I had one friend who her undergrad was mechanical, and she actually worked for Stryker for a little while, and now she's with a new company. There's a lot of crossover between the two, but me personally, nope. Blood, nope.
I would say if you know you want to be a doctor, the best way to probably do it is a lot of schools have a 4+2 program or something like that, where when you apply to college as a senior, you're in a medical program. So you're going to 2 years, so Penn State, I think you do 2 years at the main campus, and then you go to Jefferson for 4 years. So you're 2 years ahead, and that's 2 years less of school that you're paying for, and you're already in the program, so you don't have to worry. I mean, you have to keep your grades and things like that, but it's a big deal after your undergrad to apply to med school and take additional tests and all those things. It's a big deal. Whereas, so even though I know a lot of people who want to be in PT and things like that, if you know what you want to do, you really need to look at those programs that streamline you into it.
Yeah, and even if you need to take a year off after high school to figure that out, it's almost like an advantage to just wait until you know what you want to do, because my husband was a PT who did PT after, and it was a long process. It's, you know, it took him like 7 years between undergrad and then the PT program. And then I have MD friends, they're still in it, and I've been working for 8 years, so it's.
I think my friends, they all went to Ithaca, there's like a 5-year PT program where if you know that's what you wanted to do, you get it in high school, and then 5 years later, you're a PT. And that's.
What did you say about high school that for?
So when you're a senior applying to college, if you apply to that PT program, for example, at the end of that PT program, after you take your test and everything, you're a doctor of physical therapy. Whereas there's some people after 4 years who then need to go, is it another 4 years of school or 3 years?
My husband's was 3 years, so it basically figured between undergrad and then the 3-year program was 7 years to get his DPT.
All physical therapy programs are DPT programs, of course, the country is standard.
Yeah, doctor of physical therapy now, yep.
When you're worried about medical school, and it's not the panel's about, I'm glad you bring it up, because I went and I have a daughter who did a 4 program. But your average age of an incoming medical student now, if they have those programs, is like 26 or 27. That means they're starting medical school at that age, which is totally different than how it was when I went. So like you said, they're in their mid to late 30s when they got a residency. Where if you go to, I haven't talked about it. Because there's lots of those programs, even if they're not accelerated like you're mentioning, they still, you're a high school senior, getting into college and also provisionally into medical school. You're packed straight, you don't have to take an MCAT. Most students aren't getting right into medical school anymore out of college.
Yeah, the path has changed.
Unless you're in a path like that, so.
So for engineering, what would you say are like the percentage of women who come in as freshmen and finish? I was in engineering very long ago, and it was only 15% enter, right?
Yeah.
Now it's very different. And out of that, graduating was probably 8.
A lot of schools have graduating programs.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll have, I mean, anecdotally, I can't say specifically, I didn't see a lot of, there was probably just, I would say probably the same for men and women at my school. Some people just go into engineering and are like, no. And I'd say it was probably about the same for me. I didn't notice a disparity between women dropping out and men dropping out. But that goes back to, might be dependent on the program and which engineering you pick too. But me, anecdotally, I didn't see any more women dropping out than men.
So how many though in, say, freshman class in the engineering program, how many were women?
So I would think in Stony Brook, like our 101 was pretty large. I think we had maybe like 100 people in that 101 class. From like guesstimate, I think there was probably about 20 of us, which was large for freshmen. By my junior classes, there was like 3 of us. We all knew each other. Yeah.
I feel like if you look at engineering as a pool, it's probably closer to that 20 to 30%. But then going back to like environmental in particular is more female dominated. So my classes were 50-50 by the end, basically.
But it's gonna give you an edge on getting a job.
Doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily hurt.
Absolutely.
I
And
think
it's so different now, starting 25 years ago, how they treat women. It's, now a man treats a woman inappropriate, like they're
Oh, yeah.
Like, so.
We throw people off. We hear I work with a lot of women, similar, I'm sure to yourself, that they've been in the industry. I mean, one woman I work with is probably 60, 62. She was like one of 2 women who graduated from Manhattan College with her engineering undergrad, and her stories are outrageous. Like, I can't even believe some of the things she had to go through. So my life feels like a cakewalk. Like, I feel like blessed because the things that, and even just some of the culture things, like, a lot of that has gone away. And I will say, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've really felt like, man, this is kind of messed up, like, that this guy is doing. But I think that depends on where you are, what company you work for, making decisions to set yourself up for that. I'm sure there's a lot of women who experience a lot more adversity in engineering. I've been fortunate, but hearing stories from women who have been in the industry for 30, 40 years, it is really crazy to hear the things they went through.
Now I'm curious, do you guys, because that's more of a sexism question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, do you guys have a lot of ageism?
Ageism to me is more prevalent than sexism.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say that. Because a lot of the companies were hiring people straight out of college, 21, to deal with people who've been 30, 40 years in the industry. So you have these fresh out of college kids, they're like, I know everything, and then it's like, easy there, pal. You thought you knew everything, right?
Yeah, I think I was
That was a
just
reality
also
check real quick.
very, no doesn't exist, right? I'm a immovable force, right? Like, I'm just gonna, figure it out. And I got into a situation, and I mean, aerospace is not,
Yeah, I was just nowhere
right?
near it.
It's very not. And I think, if you walk into a room and you know what you're talking about and you're prepared, no matter what, like, excellence will always outweigh every ism, right? And I had to operate at that level for a very long time. And when I realized, I was like, I'm working twice as hard, and this person is getting paid probably more than me, or maybe less than I'm. But that's my work ethic. That's the way I was raised, and I will always be respectful of everyone, even if they are not me. And I encountered a lot of that. But I'm also at a level now where I can see it, and I make sure that I'm looking out for the younger women who are there. And I am so impressed with the women and men that are in the industry now, because they do not take that. They will absolutely say to you, hey, you know what? It's 5 o'clock. It's time for me to go, right? Like, I'm not gonna sit here and work till 6:30 to prove how dedicated I am. So it's getting better. That's what I'll say. It's definitely getting better. I've been in meetings where men will ask women, like, hey, Briana, do you have any thoughts on that? Or they hear you try to say something and someone speaks over you. Mm-hmm. They'll come and be like, oh, such and such, I heard you were trying to say something. Did you say that? And I now do that also. Because, and no matter who it is, men or women, because that's the only way we're gonna level that field.
We all want to be heard, respected, right? No matter how you show up to work, or who you show up to work. So I definitely see that. The whole, I'm sorry, you wanted to say something? No, I'm saying, like, in a meeting, that's what they would, they would stop the meeting and say, like, oh, you wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Or, what are your thoughts on this? So just being heard and seen in the room. Yes.
So it seems like a lot of you went into engineering because you like math and science, but now you're doing more like design and like teamwork. So is it like not really that math and science, or is it just like a civil engineering thing that's more like problem
Well, I avoided the whole thing.
I think it depends on how technical you stay. So if you find a sect and you're like, wow, I love electrical engineering and I want to stay technical. I have friends who are doing that. They are electrical engineers focused on design, and they don't want to go into management because they don't want to deal with that. Which I get it. Like, sometimes you want to just individual contribute and be able to be really good at your job, build up that technical experience. I have friends with 10 years of like engineering heavy experience. That makes you really valuable.
if you decide to cross over, or if you decide to stay, because then you could just move up the ranks in that field, but it depends.
So follow up on that question, if you want to maintain doing the math and, you know, the science, what in your opinion would be the best engineering branch to go into?
That really depends on like what you, I mean, like, I don't wanna like belittle the fact, I still use math. I mean, I do have to do calculations. We do a lot of hydraulics in what I do. We do a lot of, process-related calculations as far as, because not to get too nitty-gritty, wastewater has to do a lot with biology. They kind of go hand in hand. We have calculations we have to do. So I don't want to belittle it. You do math. It's just like you're not doing calculus, right? So our company kind of has 2 tracks for people, and you can jump back and forth between tracks. They're not so rigid. But we definitely have our technical nitty-gritties, and then we have kind of, we call them like our consultants, which is kind of really more around tracking, but I do have to do calculations. And those are the people who are really more like project managers, right? So we're dealing with more like financials, which is still math, unfortunately. And so no matter what, you're gonna be involved in math, and if you wanna stay technical, there's always an option for that. Any engineering company you work for, you can be in the trenches doing calculations. I just found there was better upward mobility when you go more project management, client development, being a true consultant, as we call it. But there's options for everybody.
I definitely I get called all the time, all week, that, you know, we have a design for the engineers and we decide, oh, this would be a lot easier for us if we moved it over 10 inches and put it, and use a different kind of anchor, right? And so I make a call to the engineer and they're running all those calculations based on the type of concrete in the wall, the type of epoxy I'm putting in there, all this stuff. They're running those technical numbers and doing the math. And like a lot of math to answer my little question. My idea on paper that seems so simple. Like
never yes or no.
Yeah, it's never right away. It's let me get back to you.
What do you mean by that? So what's the difference between staying true to the degree versus going off into the business portion of it or the sales portion of it, is what you're kind of saying?
Well, I think it's all about degree. It's just a matter of how much you're crunching the numbers or not.
Yes.
Right, yeah, if you get into like a specific engineering position, like if you're a design engineer, that's what you're gonna be doing. You're gonna be doing calculations around that, substantiation around that. I work with a lot of design engineers who are making calls on, like, for example, we have an engine that's overweight, or that part is overweight. We have to get it cleared through engineering every single time to make sure that it's not meeting like past whatever our constraint is, that's gonna weigh down the final engine or the final product. So a lot of like sustaining engineering, how do we make sure that whatever our existing product is operating at the best capacity or make improvements. So I have proposals that we'll put through to customers and we'll say, okay, we're gonna make this engine 3 times more efficient than it is now, and here's the new price tag, right? So there are engineers in the background that are doing all that science and doing all that, okay, you know, how do we make this thing better?
We always gotta talk the talk anyways.
Right.
Even if you're not the one doing the numbers.
Right. I
I'm
still
sure
have to
you're doing that.
understand what they're doing and be able to explain it, yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You guys can save time for any questions.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, I'm not.
I know that there's another panel at 2:30 as well.